Alright, so today we're going to be talking about middleware and templating. So let's go over to the lecture notes real quick. So today's week 6. All the lecture notes are online as usual. Today I'll just be taking you through the lecture notes as well as the demo. So yeah, let's get started. So we're going to first grab a copy of last week's lecture notes. So we have the shell here, and I actually have this locally, so I will pull that up. Yep. There we go. Lectures, week 6, code, and shell. So I'm just going to put that on my desktop right here. Cool. So we're going to open this up in terminal. And full screen this, make it a bit bigger. Alright, so right now, print working directory, you see we're in the shell code, and we have index, operations, and package. This is all from last week. So we're going to run an npm install to install everything, all the dependencies in package.json. Alright, cool. And then before we get started, I'm just going to open this up in Atom. And let's make that not full screen. Yeah, computer is a bit laggy. Alright, cool. So let's just double check. Okay, cool. So what is middleware? Middleware is any number of functions that are invoked by the Express.js routing layer before your... Here, actually, let me just read off of here and show you guys. Alright, yeah. So middleware is any number of functions that are involved by the Express.js routing layer before your final request handler is, and thus sits in the middle between a raw request and the final intended route. So that's like very wordy, but basically it means when you have an endpoint with a declaration that looks like this, the request variable right here that is passed into our callback function may be analyzed and or modified by middleware before we can handle it. So that's just saying before we can actually use this request variable, middleware actually does some things to it and then passes it into the function. Cool. And then for body parser, we actually used this last time right here. And what this does is basically formats the data in a way that we can use it inside our app. So if we actually comment out the app.uses, so this way we're not using body parser at all. And if I open Postman, and actually I'll also need to run my Node server, Node index.js. Okay, cool. So it's running. Alright. So right here is the post request we did from last week. It's basically making a post request to the new contact endpoint and sending in like Dickerson's phone number is 1234, etc. Right. So last week this actually worked, and we can see the output online. But if we send it now, what we see is no data received. And if we go back to our code to the new contact endpoint, we see if request.body, like if there is no request.body, then we're going to return no data received. So what this is saying is request.body is undefined if we don't have this app.use, right? So the reason for this is because the request object that's passed into the handler implements readable stream interface, blah, blah, blah. So going back to the lecture notes, this is basically saying if we didn't have the whole body parser stuff, we would have to read the data in like this, right? So we have our body, and then we're saying, okay, on request, of data, we're gonna take in a chunk, we're gonna push in that chunk, and then when that's done, we're gonna use this buffer.concat stuff. So we really don't want to use this, right? As it says, this is horrible, and body parser allows us to avoid all of this, and it does it all for us. Cool. So now we're going to uncomment these. And what this is saying is it's telling body parser to decode all requests that come in either as JSON, right here, or as URL encoded data, which is this one. So we have two app.uses. And basically it allows browsers to send data using post and put requests, and then we can handle both of them because browsers use JSON and URL encoded data. So one important thing to note is if there's a request that gives us something else, such as raw format or text or XML, this actually won't work because we're only doing JSON and URL encoded, so body parser actually doesn't handle that. So in this code, what we're going to do is close our server. We're going to run npm install morgan -- save. So after that is done running, I'm actually going to quit out this post request. My laptop is going crazy because I'm recording the screen. So actually, let me see if we can reduce this. No, all right, that's fine. So let's see. All right, cool. We're going to create var logger equals require Morgan. And as usual, you have to do the require in order to actually like import it. And then we're going to say app.use logger dev. All right. Node.js. So we start up our application, and then we're actually need the postman again. Good thing it's already like set up. Close up that. Okay, so we're gonna send this, and then as you can see, it's success, right? So no surprise there because we put back the body parser. But it's really cool that Morgan actually prints out some debugging data, and it says, okay, this was a post request to the new contact endpoint. It was a 200, which means success, and yeah, this is the time. So this is really useful for debugging and things like that. It's just a really cool tool, and the reason why I show you this is because it's a middleware for Node.js. It's actually a HTTP request logger middleware for request.js. So yeah, just like another cool thing. All right, moving on to some more fun things. Now I think I can actually quest out a postman and go back to Atom. Cool. So in here, when we hit the normal endpoint for just like the slash, instead of doing a res.send hello world, what that does right now is basically it just sends back, okay, hello world in plain text. We're going to create another folder. Basically, we want to render HTML. So, not new file, we're going to do new folder, and then we're going to call this public, and then we're going to create an index.html. Cool. So in here, I'm actually going to copy over the code from our lecture notes right here. Cool. So title just the page, and then let's do like yay wind for the body just to make it different. And then instead of doing res.send, we're going to do res.send file. And then of course like the path to it is public index.html. Sure. So now we're going to restart our server, and oh no, it's broken. Right, so we're expecting this. This is in the lecture notes, but it says path must be absolute or specify root to res.send file. And the whole reason for this is because you have to specify absolute paths or give the root, both of which are the same thing, and we can take advantage of a certain variable. So I'm going to first type this out. We're going to do brackets root is _ dir name, and this dir name variable has the project location, the string that is echoed out if you run print working directory in your project directory. So if we do like print working directory, it gives us like this. All right, so this variable allows you to use this type of referencing to reference things like HTML, CSS, JavaScript. All of these are static pages, right? So if we go, if we run this again, yay, win. So now it actually works. So just remember, like if you're going to do a send file, you have to do this referencing situation. But this only works for like static content, right? So that's not very interesting. And now we're going to move on to templating, which allows us to create dynamic web pages. Like this is what Node.js is really interesting for, as well as Express.js. And this is one of my favorite lectures. This whole templating things. So basically we can create skeletons of what HTML pages should look like and then control the content however we want. And to do this, we're going to use handlebars, which is a templating engine. So we're going to quit out real quick and then run npm install express handlebars --save. And again, save just puts it into that package.json. So we want that. So while that is running, we're going to update our file structure. So we're going to first create a views folder. And this is views. And this is generally how you would set up like a node project. So views and then layouts. And then inside layouts, actually before that, we're going to come into our index.js and then run, basically type var exphbs equals require express handle, I spelled this right, handlebars. And ex, this variable right here just stands for express handlebars, express, or I guess this is express and this is like handlebars. So in case you're wondering that. And then what you have to do is do app.engine handlebars exp I hate this variable, default layout main, and we'll talk about that all this in a sec. App.set view engine is handlebars. Cool. And we're going to create a file inside the layouts called main.handlebars in layouts, and we're going to bring the stuff from our index.html into handlebars. Get rid of that. Handlebars. Let's see what else. All right, cool. So then we actually want to create another file called first.handlebars inside of views. Make sure this is in views, not layouts. So now what we're gonna do is do some random text, first.handlebars, then go into our index.js file, and then inside of here, instead of doing send file, we're going to do res.render. And then this is what you'll be seeing a lot of, res.render. It's very, very simple to use. Basically, we're saying, okay, we want to render first. And this is actually handled by this app.engine line. So this means whenever we render something with handlebars, we go off of the default layout, right? Default layout we set is main. And as you saw, we created a main.handlebars file. So when we actually run this, Node.index.js, and we go to localhost, what we see is this yay win, right? And this is actually rendering the main.handlebars file. So if we actually create, call this like main.handlebars, and then restart the server, yeah, you see it's main.handlebars. So we know that this like routing is working, and well, I guess this rendering is working in the sense that, okay, it's rendering the default layout, right? But you might be wondering, okay, why isn't it rendering first? Because we specified as first, right? So the reason for this is because main.handlebars is always going to be rendered because it's a layout. So the layout is actually useful because we can have all of the stuff that we don't want to replicate into other files. So we can have like doc type, HTML, head, like all this meta stuff and like title. But what we really want to change is this body right here, right? So what we can do is triple brackets and then body. And I'm gonna first show you like what happens when you do this. When we refresh, you see that we're actually rendering what's in first. So let me take you through what's happening in here. So in our index.js, we're setting the app engine for handlebars, and then we're saying, okay, default layout is main. So main will always run as the default layout unless specified otherwise, but these triple brackets actually, how do you describe this? So basically it will render out whatever is body, and when we do res.render first, we're saying, okay, first is what I'm going to set as my body. So this is my body. And you can do cool things like h1 and put this here. And if we run this again, it will actually render it out. So it's not just text, it's actual HTML. Cool. So let's see. If you, and just like another like cool thing, if you only do 2, so I'm like going back and forth right now, maybe this will help. So if you actually only do 2 brackets, I believe this will not render it out as HTML, right? So it will only do it this way. And there's like certain situations for why you would do one or the other. And I'll let you guys kind of think about that while we move on. So now we're going to do, last week we didn't quite get to this part, but it's all in the lecture notes from last time. So definitely take a look this next part. So for operation, what we have currently is if we do like /factorial and then pass in like a query, it will return, oh, that's not what we want. It will return the factorial, which is 6, and we can do the same thing as square. So number is not defined. Let's see. Oh, okay. Maybe we can't do that yet. All right, ignore that for now. So let's see. Cool. So going back to like the factorial, like so factorial works, and then it was actually operation /factorial query parameter number, and then now this will work. So as you can see, it squares it. But we want to make this like look a lot nicer. So Express and handlebars allows us to do that really easily. So we can close out first, and we're going to create another view called operation dot handlebars views. Okay, cool. And let's see, page, and back in our index.js, instead of doing res.render, oh, okay, so this was the endpoint that was handling the /operation / like factorial. So you can check out last week's lecture notes to see how that works. But basically, instead of doing a res.send like we did earlier, we are going to do a res.render operation semicolon, and then we're going to just pass in a few parameters or variables. Okay. Cool. So now what we're doing is rendering operation, and operation doesn't actually have anything yet, so we're going to do h1 and then say we are performing. And then what's really cool is when you actually pass in these variables, you're saying, this JSON, I guess, what you're saying is, okay, in my operation.handlebars, I can refer to something as oper, I can refer to something as INP and result, and they will just refer to op number and operations OP number. So what we can do in here is say oper, and it will actually print out what is stored inside that variable, which is really cool. So just continuing on, our input was, and then INP, and then the output was result. Cool. So we're able to access the object that is passed into the render statement by simply writing out the key, right? And we can do this with double brackets again instead of the triple brackets because we're not rendering out like HTML. So if you wanted to like make a link to like whatever operation, like factorial, for example, and like link that to something else like Facebook or whatever, you can actually do like a ref equals like Facebook. Of course, it doesn't work like this, but like you can do something like this, but you would need to use triple brackets instead of double brackets. But for right now, we only need double brackets, so that's a distinction here. So we can run our server. All right, app listening, and let's render this again. All right, cool. So we're, let's see. Sorry. operations on square. I'm like trying to figure out. Okay, so let's see what happened there. So it actually did not print out exactly how I was hoping for, but let's see if we can fix this. So we have operation.handlebars. Spell that right? Yep. Main.handlebars. Body. Oh, right. This is the reason. We actually do want triple brackets for main.handlebars because we're actually rendering out this operation file as HTML. So if we go now, yeah, now it looks a lot nicer, right? So notice that in here, let me get this back to normal. Okay, so in this res.send, we have not a valid operation, and we're only res.sending that. So let's edit this a bit to make it looking like a little nicer. So we do like var error. Oh, actually, I guess before that, I'll show you what happens. So like if we do like number equals -3, that actually works. Factorial. Oh, actually, I think this is what they were asking for. Oh, sorry, operation. What am I doing? So if we do something like this, not a valid operation, right? So instead, we can create like an error catcher kind of thing. So what we can do is, okay, if that's not valid, then we're gonna just set error to true, and then you can ignore this for now. And then result error is error, and then what we're doing now is just basically setting this new variable error to true if one of our inputs is invalid, which is what we're doing right here. And then when we render, we're going to set result to null if error is true. So what we're going to do here is, okay, if it's an error, and this is a ternary operation, you can look that up later, but basically it's saying if error is not true, or is true, we're going to set it to null, set result to null. Else, we're going to set it to operations op number. So that's just kind of like syntactic sugar right there, which looks really nice. Cool. So back in operation.handlebars, I'm going to show you something really, really cool. We can actually do if statements in here. So if it's an error, then we're going to print out h1, you gave a bad input, and h1. And then we can also do like else statements, and then these, and then we can do end if. So this is the syntax for if else statements. We have our if, and then our whatever statement, we have else, and then we have like a /if, and these are all in double brackets. So this is how we can use conditionals in handlebars, and one of the reasons why I really love like templating engines, and of course like a lot of things do that, but after taking this Node.js class, like this was the first time that I was like playing around with this in Node.js. So that was really cool to me. Cool, so now we're going to go back to here and then display some more information. Well, let's show this first. Sorry, I'm like going all over the place. Alright, so if we say, you gave bad input. Alright, so now we're handling everything inside of our file, our handlebars file, instead of just like res.sending random text, which is a lot better for organization and just like consistency. Alright, let's see. So if it's a bad operation or it's a bad number, we're going to set error to true. And then now we can actually do some more interesting things, such as if error, we're going to do pass dot. Oh, sorry. I think I skipped over a bit. Okay, yeah, okay, sorry. So, sorry about that. We have, I'm just going to create a few different things right now. We basically want to create like a history of all the things that we've done, operations that we've done. So I'm going to write down some code first. Push that operation, else pass dot push op plus plus number plus. Don't you love appending strings to each other? Number, semicolon, and then past is past. The past is the past. Cool. So just to take you through what we did, we created a variable, an array called past, and this is going to store all of our past operations. And then in here, we just added a bit more like error checking. So if it's a wrong operation or it's a wrong number, then we're going to set error to true. We're going to press the number, and if it's error, we're going to say, okay, we're going to push in bad operation. Else, we're going to push in like this operation and store it. So inside our operation.handlebars, we have to create like our section for our history. So for this, we're just going to do an ordered list, and then we're going to say each past, and this is how you do like a for each loop, and each. Isn't this cool, guys? So now we're going to do a list item, and we're going to say this, and this is how you refer to like something that you're iterating over. So check out the syntax. You can find out more online at the handlebars documentation. And if we actually run this, woo, one bad operation. Now let's do something that's like factorial of like 10. Operation is not defined. Alright, this is... Alright, let's see what I did wrong here. So we have and this is like cool because you guys can see like real-time debugging. Nice. So at line 61, operation is not defined. Oh, so this should be operations. There we go. So node index.js. And each time we restart the server, it actually rewrites the history because all the variables are flushed. But if we, continue on and do like, oh, what is the square of 10? Like, as you can see, it's going to keep storing it. And we can do like square root. Oh, JK, we don't have a square root endpoint. But if we keep doing things like, we should probably do square of 100. So as you can see, like, this is a really powerful way to dynamically change what's on your page. You can, print different variables. You can have different variables out here. You can iterate over for loops, things like that. So, excuse me. So now you can see like our log history, and we actually created like a dynamic web page. So this is really cool. Definitely encourage you guys to play around with it. Check out the lecture notes if you kind of missed something in this video, or just go back in the video. There's a lot of things that you can do with dynamic page templating and rendering. So we'll be diving into this a lot more, and this is going to be something we'll be looking at a lot over the next few weeks, as well as in the projects. Now, going back to middleware for a brief second before we end this lecture, if we want to include CSS into this page, it's actually kind of weird, like, because this is like a server, the referencing for files isn't exactly accurate, or exactly how you would expect it to be. So what you have to do inside your app index.js is say app.use/public express.static public. And remember this public folder that we created before? We're basically going to use this for whatever CSS, so we can actually delete this index.html, but what we can do is create a new folder called CSS, and then create like style.css. And now after we do this app.use/public, we're basically saying, okay, I want to use public to serve all of my static files. So just like going to the lecture notes real quick. So if we want to use CSS, we have to make it so that Express can serve these files on our own server, right? So this app.use is serving up this folder called public as here, these are all of my static files, please use them. And this line makes it serve your public folder directly as files under the /public root. So if we restart our server, and we know this like kind of directory hierarchy, what we can do is localhost/public/css/style.css, and well, right now there's nothing in it, so I should probably put something in here like for the whole body, we're going to make the background color red. which is really ugly, but that's okay. So restart our server, refresh, and as you can see, we can actually find this file through this endpoint. Even though we didn't create like an endpoint, we can actually grab this static file. And just to show you guys that it wouldn't work without doing that, if we comment this out, restart our server, yeah, we'll actually get like, okay, we can't get this because we didn't make an endpoint for it. So that's just showing you the power of like middleware and saying this line right here is so simple, yet it provides us so much because we don't have to handle all of the routing ourselves. We just say this one line, and then we can serve up all of our static files through this folder hierarchy. And so this /public is specifying the URL files that the files can be accessed through right here. So this is saying, okay, we're going to use /public as our URL endpoint, and then this right here is specifying the folder in your actual server. So this is the user side, basically the same thing as like app.get. It's basically saying, okay, whenever the user hits the public endpoint, we're going to send them like whatever they want that's referenced from this public folder. So that's just like another way you can add in like CSS, JavaScript, things like that. So that's it for this lecture. Definitely look at the lecture notes to review, and yeah, hope you guys have a good day.